Hello to all of our friends in Parentween Village. We are back with part two of today's conversation with Judith Pinto. She is the founder of Cafe Moms, and Cafe stands for Calm, Attuned, and Freely Engaged. And as I said at the end of the last part of our conversation, what mom wouldn't want to describe herself as calm, attuned, and freely engaged, right?
Absolutely. It's kind of aspirational,
Isn't it?
but you
Well,
need to
and
know where
so
you're going.
right. I love that you say like you have to have a sense of the destination and that calm is so much of what you talk about because there is so much not calm in our world.
Yeah.
And, here in the States, we're looking at, God help us, an election year, which is going to precipitate all kinds of not calm.
Calm.
And I mean, at least God willing, we're not navigating a pandemic shortly after this year, or during a presidential election. But goodness, just whether it's politics, whether it's the environment, whether it's finances, I mean, finances are certainly a thing in a post pandemic world. Calm feels so elusive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were
Well, and it
talking,
is. It is elusive because it's our whole nervous system is wired to look for threat. And
mhm,
threat, we don't feel calm when we're feeling threatened. We feel
mhm,
anxious, we feel afraid, we feel worried, we feel scared, we feel angry, we feel resentful, we feel regret, we feel sad, we feel all kinds of uncomfortable feelings that make us feel and acknowledge that we're not safe. We
mhm.
have some experience of, in mind, body, heart, of being kind of adrift. And it's that what's that little kid song? Nobody loves me, everybody hates me, going to the garden to eat worms.
I
Just an
don't know that
adult
one,
version of it. Oh,
but okay.
apparently it was a camp song here. But it's that, just feeling lonely and isolated, and pandemic was not great for that. But
Mm-mm.
this sense of being adrift in the world and having no place to turn
Mhm.
is the antithesis of calm, which is
Well,
the
and it
experience of feeling safe, soothed, and connected.
and it's so hard when the parent feels that way or when the adult feels that way to then provide that experience for our kids. And if we're feeling that way, and I know you and I have talked many times about how, the frontal lobe of the brain is the last part of the body physiologically to develop, right? And if we're feeling that way and presuming that we're past the age of about 25 or
Right.
26 when it
Yeah.
actually does completely develop, right? And we've got full cognitive capacity with the frontal lobe fully online. How do our kids feel when they don't feel that calm from anywhere and they don't have the executive function capacity to fully rationalize their way through it? No wonder we have so many kids looking at suicide as an option.
Well, if they don't feel safe, soothed, and connected, and the adults in their world don't feel safe, soothed, and connected, there's no safe harbor.
Surprise. Correct. Which
And
is why, as members of Parent Tween Village, this part of the conversation is exclusively for you. If you have not watched the first part of our conversation with Judith, definitely go back to our YouTube channel and find it because we talked about what calm is. She said it's a recognition of what it is for you in your thoughts, your feelings, and your body. We talked about how to get calm, how to stay calm. And now we're going into talking about how planning ahead can help us do that even better. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to help our kids when they're in that dysregulated state. So let's start with the planning ahead. What do you mean by planning ahead? Because holy crap, ADHD right here. Planning is like, what? It's like planning is a four-letter word in my
oh
world.
no.
Like, what are you talking about, Judith? Like, is this
Well,
about to be something that I'm like, oh my God, I can't do?
no,
Or,
no.
I know you're going to
It's
say I
it's
can because
baby
that's who you
size,
are.
it's bite size, it's baby sized. It's every parent that I've ever spoken to knows when their child is going to have their hardest time of the day. It's going to be in the morning, getting them out of bed to go to school. That's where they're going to have their conflict. It's going to be when they come home from school because they're tired and they're hangry. It's going to be when you tell them to go do their homework. It's going to be when you're interrupting video gaming to come to dinner or homework. It's going to be time to turn that off and get to bed. You know when they're going to have that hard time. And you know when it's going to be the worst, and you know when it's going to be the easiest, because everybody has their, you know, the thing they do the least well and the thing they
Mhm.
do poorly, but it's better than the other stuff. So maybe mornings are okay. Maybe after school is okay because they like going to school and they, have a good time on the bus with the kids. But homework, because math is hard and the math teacher gives them lots of homework, and it's just you don't know that. You just know
Mhm.
that the minute you advise them, you say, "Hey, get your homework done." They lose it. So you can plan for that. It means what typically happens is you tell them you got to do your homework, they lose it, you lose it with them, and then you just kind of escalate. And then the rest of
Mhm.
the evening goes to heck in the handbasket. So,
Whatever. We there's no bad words around here. If they're
yeah,
appropriate, if it fits, go ahead.
but it's how do you interrupt that? I mean, you could sit there and say, like, look, when I ask you to do your homework, like, don't lose it. And then the same could be asked of it's like, well, when I'm kind of showing you that I'm having a really hard time with that request, you lose it. So
Mhm.
show me, don't tell me.
Mhm.
So if a child loses it, you can plan ahead and go, okay, I'm going to leave everything else aside and I'm going to go, okay, homework time, that's going to be where I'm going to put my energies because it matters. They've got to get through this for whatever reason you've decided it matters.
Mhm.
I'm going to make sure that 5 minutes before I step into that, I get to a calm place. And then just because I'm calm doesn't mean that they're going to be, "Oh, okay, you're asking so nicely. Of course I'm gonna." Of course not. It's
If
not going to
only.
change them, you're changing you. So, there's no magic wand that's gonna come out because 'cause you're calm. But you are going to then be able to be intentional and step in to stay calm. So when they are here, you're not going up there with them, because if you ride that escalator
Mhm.
with them, you're both losing it, and there's no safe harbor. There's no place to
Mhm.
come back to. There's nobody that they can turn to get back to safe, soothed, and connected.
Mhm.
Because now you're not safe because 'cause you're yelling at them. You're not soothed and
Right.
you can't soothe them, and you're distant.
Mhm.
So if you can stay in a space where and it's kind of, I mean, the jargony term is co-regulation, but if you can use a mini meditation practice to get to know your calm, to get to that place of calm and go, "At this time, I am gonna do this, and whatever
Mhm.
happens, I'm gonna stay steady. And I'm gonna keep my thinking brain online because here's what I wanna say, here's what I think they might need, and here's how we're gonna step forward into it." And so it becomes about, I have a plan. Before I go into having that conversation about it's time for homework, or it's time for bed, or it's time for fill in the blank, I'm gonna take 5 minutes to myself, and I'm gonna do a mini meditation. I'm gonna get grounded. And then I'm going to show up with my relational values intact, with respect,
Mhm.
and with kindness and compassion, and openness to hearing what they have to say.
Mhm.
And I'm going to put my best, because it's really hard to attune to their emotions, let alone your own, when you've now lost your mind.
Mhm.
'Cause you don't really care about how they feel. I mean, you're not even paying attention to how you feel. You're just angry. So
Mhm.
being able to then attune to them and helping them to walk through and hopefully solve a problem that they're having, which is why they're upset.
Well, and as you were talking about taking that moment to have that breath and regulate yourself, I could almost hear some folks saying, "Yeah, I'm like preparing for battle. It's like I'm focused." And I think it's important. I know you would agree
Mhm.
when I say we're not looking at this like you're going into battle because what you expect is what you're going to get. And so if
Yes.
you're like, "Oh, I'm ready," that's what you're going to get. So I really like how you said that I'm helping myself focus so that I can come from my place of my values.
Mhm. And it's not unlike when they were little infants and they cried, you didn't go in there and yell at them. Like,
Mhm.
they're having a hard time. They're not trying
Mhm.
to give you a hard time. That's a Gottman quote. I love that one.
Yeah.
But they're having a hard time. And so what did you do when they were an infant? You picked them up and you tried to figure out what was happening for them that was making them feel unsafe,
Mhm.
and you solved the problem.
Mhm.
And you kind of did it by tuning into them because they certainly weren't telling you. As they get words, we start to expect that, oh, you should just be able to tell me. Well, go look at the adults that you live with and work with. Do they just tell you or do they typically show you? They show you. And you hear it in the tone of their voice. You hear it
Oh,
in
yeah.
the body language and the attitude and the maybe the slamming door that they're having a hard
Mhm.
time. They're not
Mhm.
trying to give you one.
Yeah.
So, if we can kind of go in with that place of they're having a hard time, they're not giving me a hard time. This is still the same little person. They're just taller and, have more words, but their
Mhm.
brain still doesn't know how to use those words because maybe they haven't had a
Right.
lot of practice or exposure to know how to talk about how they feel and what they need.
Right. Right.
Well, let me take them in this place where they're here and I'm trying to figure it out. Let me stay curious. And I need to stay
Mhm.
calm to stay curious. I need to stay calm to
Mhm.
stay respectful. I need to stay calm to be kind in my words and what I do.
Mhm.
And so from that place, stepping in is easier.
Mhm. So, another thought that I had as we were going through this, I hear actually my business coach in my
Mm.
head. When you going back to the beginning of the conversation or this part of the conversation when you said you were like, you know when your kid is going to be least adaptable or least capable or the area where they are least good at, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's the morning, the afternoon, the evening. And you chose the example of tackling homework
Mhm.
and you said, um, this is what's important to you because it matters or because you've decided it
Mhm.
matters, right?
Mhm.
I'd like to chat about the decision of what matters for a second and get your
Yeah.
take on that because we bring meaning to things as human beings
Mhm.
in ways that aren't always healthy. And it's the
Mhm.
human nature to fill in and to find meaning in things. If you vote, like, if again, talking like politics, right? Well, if you voted for that guy, that means you are X, Y, and Z as a human being.
Right.
Because if somebody voted for the other guy that we can't fathom, I literally had somebody message me the other night going, how on earth could anybody believe that XYZ is the person that should lead this country? And that person is in such a state of disbelief, they don't have the capacity to be curious, right? Because she's decided XYZ is important.
Yeah.
And we bring meaning to things. Tell me your perspective on that because I see a lot of times parents get attached to an idea of something that's important
Mhm.
and that's the again, as the acronym or the saying goes, that's the hill they choose to die on. and
Yeah.
and as an outside perspective, I kind of look at them and I'm like, but why? Like, what's important
Mhm.
to you about that?
Well, and that's where going back to values is important, right?
Mm.
So, what are your priority values? So, is it, achievement? Is
Mhm.
is is achievement and getting straight A's and all of that? Is that the most important thing for you? If it is in that top four, and really you can't keep track of more than that anyway. So, if it's in
Indeed.
that top four, is it the top of those? And if it is, then that's the hill you're choosing to die on. But that means that there are other things that you are making subordinate to that. So being really clear
Hmm.
that that's what you're doing.
Well, and so then what happens, especially here in Parent Tween Village,
Mhm.
a lot of the folks here have older kids.
Mhm.
We say largely 10 to 20,
Right.
but those are perforated edges, right?
Yeah.
And if you've got a 15-year-old, maybe as the parent, your value is achievement,
Mhm.
but then your kid's value isn't achievement.
And that's
Can
that
you speak
place.
to that?
Yeah. And again, that's that place where I think lots of times parents feel that their job is to impart their worldview, their belief system, their values, their all of it. That's the
Mhm,
generational transfer. And what sometimes often gets overlooked is that really the relationship that they have with you, when they look back on what life was like with you with warmth and fondness, that's actually the biggest generational achievement that you can
Mm.
offer. That is probably the biggest gift you can pass down. When I
Mhm.
speak to adults who speak about their parents who have passed with a level of tenderness and warmth and affection that's so genuine and so not misguided. It's not they're not trying to make it look good. It's not
Mhm.
artificial. It's not an artifice. It's not something they're putting on. It's it's so beautiful. And
Mhm.
typically it's because the parent recognized that it's not their role to hand them a package, but to
Mhm.
help them grow into their own package.
Mhm.
What do
And
you
I
value
think that's
in life, and how do I support you to live that?
yeah, yeah. And I can say at this point, to your point of adults whose parents have passed, I one of mine is still alive and one did pass, and that's something that I felt was missing from her,
Mhm,
is that she felt very much like, you know, "You have to take on my worldviews."
mhm.
And when my worldviews didn't match up with hers, it was really challenging. And, she's not here for me to ask anymore,
Yeah.
about what that was like for her. But it was really challenging as the daughter to be like, "Mom, I'm not trying to disrespect you. I just don't agree with you. And not agreeing with you doesn't mean I don't respect you. I just don't agree."
And actually, I did a meditation class today on the focus of the meditation was on open-mindedness. So the second
Mm,
kind of value that I kind of, rock
mhm,
your values, open-mindedness. And one of the questions that I got was, it's like, well, like I love this. I love being open-minded, but my daughter isn't open-minded. Um, and that can be really hard when you're trying to build that connection. It's like, I really want
mhm,
to try and understand you. I wish you would try and understand me. But at some point, you just need to pour it forward. And at some point, they're going to not need to resist.
mhm.
And so if you
Someday,
can,
some way.
well, and yeah, I think there's that joke. It's the 17-year-old who grows up to be 22 and is just amazed at how much their parents learned in those 4 years.
Mhm. I think that was a Mark Twainism, but
There
yes.
we go. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
So,
Well, and I think these pieces of conversation can be particularly valuable to folks who have younger ones yet, right? Because, yes, we say largely between 10 and 20. What I've started saying is we're for folks who have current or future teens and tweens,
yeah,
where, hey, how do we start practicing that open mindedness when they're 5 and 7 and 10 years old
yeah.
before they get to 15 and 17 and 20? Because some of what you're talking about, if we can practice this mindfulness and learning to stay regulated when they're dysregulated, when they're 5, it's going to be a whole lot easier for us to do that when they're 12 and
Yes,
14.
yes. And I think the key piece to
These
that is
skills
that,
that pros like you go ahead.
oh, sorry, you froze and we got a little garbled there. But it kind of go back to that example of, when they were infants, they didn't tell you. You tuned in and you figured it out and you solved the problem. So when you think about, because the other part of this is, well, what do you do when they do melt down? Because they're going to. Just because you planned ahead to stay calm, get
Mhm,
calm, to stay calm, and to be available to them, doesn't mean they're not going
mhm,
to behave in the exact same way that they have every other time you've asked them for something. But if you
mhm,
can go in open-minded and hear them out, go, hey, you look like you're having a bad day. What's up? And listen,
mhm.
not for the perspective of convincing them to see your perspective, but for the purpose of understanding theirs
Right.
and
Getting
nothing
curious.
else. That's the other part of the plan. Stay calm so you can stay curious, not to solve the problem, but so that you can understand enough that maybe in a week from now, you might be able to have a dialogue about where that
Mhm.
underlying problem really is. Maybe they'd
Awesome.
like to do well at math, but like
Mhm,
they just don't get it. Maybe there's a learning
mhm,
disability that needs an assessment and intervention. Maybe the
mhm,
math teacher is just really mean and, and unrealistic. Who
mhm.
knows?
Right.
Maybe they
Awesome.
have some other need that's not being met. and it comes
Oh,
out.
for sure. Yeah, I actually, to that point, I remember having a conversation with a woman who lost one of her sons to suicide, and his older brother struggled in math that following school year. And he finally, long story short, it finally came out that he had gotten so far behind in math because he fundamentally didn't understand it, because something that was shared on a day that his brain wasn't there because he was in a particular space in the grief process. He missed a really important concept one day or one week, and everything else built upon it. And without that building block, he was toast in that class. And it was a higher level math class. And it was just, it was like behavior so uncharacteristic for him that the mom was like, "What is going on?" Initially, she was really angry. But finally, when she took the time to step back and was like, "Dude, what else is going on?" And that's what came to the surface. She felt horrid because she was like, "We're all grieving his passing, and I had no idea that that was what was actually lying underneath this challenging math year," you know? So I'm glad that you brought up that it could be any number of things.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Judith, you and I could absolutely chat all night, every night about helping families like this, but I am going to wrap this up. I'm going to say thank you, as always. And for any of our members of Parent Tween Village, if you would like to find Judith, you can find her at cafemoms.co. She also has a profile on our website at Parent Tween Connection because she is one of our trusted experts. And I cannot recommend reaching out to her enough if you feel like life is just more chaos than calm and you need some outside support to become that calm, attuned, freely engaged parent that you'd like to be. She's pretty awesome. So thank you, Judith. I'm so glad
Thank
to
you.
have you again.
My
Have a
pleasure.
great one, everybody.